still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
I'm Will Aubrey. Time for another edition of the Improbability Engine, and this time we're talking about movies, specifically black and white movies. A lot of people may not realize this, but I got my start as a writer, writing for newspapers, writing movie reviews.
Really?
I did.
That's interesting.
And so I've had a long time interest in movies, and we're going to talk about great black and white films today, and there certainly is a vast collection of them. And I can remember when my kids were little, they didn't want to watch black and white movies. It's as though they thought the lack of color was a defect.
Yeah, the black and white movies that there's so many that are just incredible cultural phenomenons. Look, the Treasure of the Sierra Madre. We don't need no stinking betches. You don't even, people don't even know where they came from, but they use these things, and they become ingrained in the lexicon of American life, and they all come from a lot of these black and white movies that are just incredible. I mean,
one of the greatest black and white movies of all time is unquestionably Casablanca. I saw it again a couple of weeks ago. It's an incredible film. Great performances by Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart. A great performance by Paul Henreid. His performance is so understated in that film, and his character loves his wife so much that not only is he willing to die for her, he's willing to let her go off and be with another man, and
absolutely,
just to save her life. And it's an incredible film, and Paul Henreid himself is an incredible story because he was an actor in German films in the 30s,
right?
And he wound up leaving because he was declared an official enemy of the Third Reich.
If there's ever anything that you can put on your tombstone with pride,
that
official enemy of the Third Reich is one you wear with pride. That's awesome.
He wound up coming to America and had a great career here, and then in the ultimate irony, he was blacklisted during the McCarthy era because he objected to the House Un-American Activities Committee and what they were doing and what Senator Joseph McCarthy was doing.
That really, I didn't know he was blacklisted. That to me is that's pretty.
But back to Casablanca. Another Claude Rains is great in that film as Captain Renault.
Hilarious. The best line in the movie. Everybody knows. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon for the rest. Or play it. Play it, Sam. Play that song. The best line in the movie is, "I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you, to find out that there's gambling in this establishment. Captain, your winnings."
That and
the greatest line in the movie.
That and round up the usual suspects.
Right, round up the usual suspects. And it's just one of those where it's just fantastic. And a lot of these black and white movies, we were talking about this off air. A lot of these black and white movies are they're just better on the big screen. You have to see them, on a big screen, large, in a dark room, because that's what they were designed for. This was, they were made to be played on these big projectors, and you lose so much when you put it on a small screen. And it's incredible to me. I actually got to see Casablanca here at the Cherie Theater when they were doing their classics, and it was an eye-opening experience. I recommend that to anybody. And Casablanca is one of the greatest movies of all time. It's quotable. It's one of those things that you put in there, and it has been the basis for parody for decades afterwards, which is just amazing. My next movie is it's not one a lot of people know, and I'd be surprised if you know it. The movie's called The World, the Flesh, and the Devil.
I am not familiar with it.
Okay, this is it's a Harry Belafonte movie from the late 1950s. The premise is pretty straightforward and fits the era that it's in. He's a mine inspector who goes down in a mine and gets trapped for a couple days. Well, he gets tired of waiting for them to dig him out, so he starts digging himself out. He comes out and he finds the whole world is empty because of a nuclear war. A neutron bomb has killed all the people, and the only reason he survived was because he was in the mine. And so he begins to explore, and he ends up going to New York City. Now, Harry Belafonte is an African-American man, one of the preeminent African-Americans in the late 1950s, early 1960s. And he comes to New York and begins setting up a radio call trying to find any other survivors in the world. And what he doesn't know is that there is a woman in New York City, a white woman. And for its time, this was extremely risque to even insinuate romance between African Americans and whites. And so they began to fall in love when another man shows up, this time a white man. And the struggle that ensues is it is a powerful allegory about the nature of humanity and what we put emphasis on and why we do the things we do from a cultural standpoint. But it also talks about the waste that is the nuclear holocaust and how that would influence the world. I recommend that movie, The World of Flesh and the Devil, with Harry Belafonte. A fantastic film, one that will, I think, give you a better insight on the thinking of late 1950s, humanity at that point. It's a very good movie.
Psycho with Anthony Perkins
has to be on the list.
One of the more terrifying horror films ever made.
And you don't see anything.
It does it without color. The blood that you see in the shower scene in that movie is gray, and it's
chocolate syrup. Did you know that? It was chocolate syrup diluted with water.
It's just an incredible film.
Wonderful movie, and
the way it builds suspense and tension, and then the eeriness of the final scene.
Absolutely. The thing that's most incredible about it, and one that's easily overlooked because it's so kind of passé now, the heroine, the leading actress in the movie, dies about halfway through.
Janet Leigh.
Janet Leigh dies halfway through. And you're left with this young actor who's, at this point, really hadn't done anything. He's got to carry this taut thriller through to the end. And the established actress in Janet Leigh, she only has to, her entire performance is limited to the first half of the movie. And yet, with Hitchcock in the director's seat, with fantastic acting and some of the greatest cinematography ever, you get one of the greatest suspense movies of all time. It's just a very powerful, epic kind of thing, but it's all set in this tiny little motel that,
by the way,
could have been found anywhere.
If you love this movie and you haven't seen the TV series Bates Motel, give it a shot.
Absolutely. And there's a powerful synergy between the acting, the directing, and the script in this particular movie that really is hard to imagine anything ever capturing that again. Fantastic movie, really powerfully done, and one that I recommend. It's one that I would tell people to watch kind of regardless of when. Okay, so here's my next movie.
Okay.
The General, starring Buster Keaton.
Oh my.
Okay, so for those who don't know, this movie is a silent movie. It's not. I mean, there's not dialogue, but I tell you what it does do. It is the first action movie of all time. Now, it's funny. Buster Keaton's funny, so let's just kind of put that down too. So if you like Die Hard, you can draw a line to the general and see how that works. If you liked Lethal Weapon, you can draw lines from those movies to the general. Buster Keaton's a physical actor of the silent era, arguably one of the greatest stars during the silent era. And the premise is that he's a Union soldier who steals the Confederate locomotive, the General, and he tries to escape back north with it. And mayhem ensues. What makes this movie so incredible is, first off, the vaudevillian timing that Buster Keaton had. He was at the height of his powers. He was funny, but it pushed the technological limits of its time. It was an action movie in the silent era. And in today's day and age, it's hard to imagine a movie, an action movie, without the special effects dominating the action sequences. All of these action sequences that happened were done by Buster Keaton, and they were done without the aid of audio effects. It's just incredible to watch. I recommend it.
Well, next I'm going to mention a series of movies, the Thin Man movies.
Okay.
And the Thin Man movies tell the story of Nick and Nora Charles,
yeah,
William Powell and Myrna Loy, and William Powell's character, Nick Charles, is a detective, okay?
Okay.
And the witty repartee between Myrna Loy and William Powell is really what makes the movies worth watching. They're all mysteries, but it's not the plot, it's not the mystery that make you want to watch the films. It's William Powell and Myrna Loy. And
it's a chemistry movie.
I don't know that you could make these movies today. Maybe you could get away with it. William Powell Nick Charles calls Nora old thing in the movie. It's kind of like I refer to Marilyn as the wife sometimes.
And you watch those, you could have a chemistry movie that really plays up the dynamic between two actors and the characters they portray. You can find that in that era, and it's so much more difficult now to find a movie carried by a couple of actors, and that's now we've reverted to either ensemble casting or character-driven plots that don't really embrace the acting as much as the actors try to fill their space inside the character. But those old movies are really good. I'm going to have to watch those because I haven't seen that one.
I want to mention a movie that's only partially in black and white.
Okay.
Because my wife had never seen it in color until we got married, because her family had a black and white TV. And, I mean, this is 1977.
Right.
Her family still had a black and white TV. The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
The beginning of that movie is in black and white. Okay?
Absolutely.
And then it changes when Dorothy walks into Oz.
Right.
And it changes to color. And at that point, Dorothy says, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. And so my wife had never seen it in color until she saw it in color with me. And at that point, she says, I never understood that before.
Right. And what's really impressive about The Wizard of Oz, it was at the very cutting edge of the technology at the time. It absolutely was cutting edge. And the plasticine and cellophane that they used in the Oz scenes for color, this was all brand new. I mean, the biggest thing to give people nowadays an idea, you remember watching The Addams Family?
Yes.
On television. Black and white television show, fantastic. Did you know that the walls on the set were pink?
No.
Of course you didn't. It was black and white. They had engineered everything to be best seen in black and white. And then all of a sudden you have this movie in The Wizard of Oz, and honestly, the perfect script to do it. I mean, you want to make a break in a movie thematically, you go from the black and white beginning where Kansas and it's dusty and dirty and hard scrabble life and the gray barn and the clapboard house, and then you go into the glowing, cinematic vision that is neon colors, and it's the brightest color you can imagine. It was as powerful as the script was, and the script was very good. so anytime you can have that kind of thing happen, that's a really powerful setup, and one that, great movie, one that I recommend everybody watch at least once, but maybe twice. Okay, my next movie is a newer movie.
Okay.
Newer in comparison to the rest of them, and it's the Steven Spielberg movie Schindler's List.
Okay.
We talk about these black and white movies in the past with a little bit of a reverence to their time frame and the technology of the time. This movie, made in 1993, talking about the Holocaust, a powerful movie unto itself, a director at the height of his powers. The script is fantastic. The acting is superb. But the choice was made to shoot in black and white. And looking back on it, it was the absolute right thing to do. There are moments interspersed of color, but for my generation, the only thing that we could ever refer to when we thought about World War II and the Holocaust were these black and white newsreels, black and white pictures. We could not connect our reality to that. And here we have this movie that it disarms you by being in black and white. It makes you go, this is real. This is exactly what happened. And the directing and the acting were as powerful as any movie of the 20th century. And I think, to me, the choice to go into black and white and to shoot in black and white was one of the reasons for its impact, because there weren't a lot of movies that showed the contemporaneous movies at the time that showed what the Holocaust looked like. And so whenever we think about it, we think about those things in black and white, and to have this movie pull those through and to show the atrocity of it and how human it was. I think it's a fantastic movie, and it's a fantastically done shooting for putting it in black and white as well.
I want to mention two other modern black and white films. At least I'm going to call them modern. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, which was hilarious. It was a spoof of the old Humphrey Bogart type crime movies.
Right. The hard-boiled detective and stuff like that.
Absolutely. But then The Last Picture Show.
Right.
Which, similar to Schindler's List, the reason, or at least one of the reasons it was in black and white, is to set the mood.
Right.
And it's an awesome movie about small-town Texas in the late 60s or early 70s, and the desolation, really, that those people felt at that time.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, which, for those of you who are not up to date on this movie, it's Steve Martin stars, and
it's hilarious.
It's really funny. But one of the things that the movie does is it takes footage from old movies and intersperses it with the storyline that Steve Martin is running. And technologically it's an experimental movie, is what it is. I mean, it was experimental. It was different. There had never been a movie like it. And as far as I'm concerned, there hasn't been a movie since that's been like it. Steve Martin is just one of the funniest people on earth. So when you put him into a movie and you say, go have fun, you just know what you're going to get. You're going to get something like this. A really fantastic movie. And Last Picture Show, when we think about black and white movies, oftentimes we think about the silver screen, the good old days and stuff like that, whenever you can utilize that tool to put something in complete juxtaposition, I think that's where you get a very powerful dynamic.
And Sybil Shepherd's great in that movie.
Yeah, well, Sybil Shepherd's fantastic actress anyway. I mean, one of the more overlooked actresses of her generation. She's just a good actress. But you see in that movie, when you talk about the good old days, black and white movies, the good old days, and they show emptiness and despair and desolation, you get that juxtaposition that, you know, maybe things weren't as good as we thought they were.
One other series that has to be mentioned is the I'm going to mention 2 or 3 series and then one final movie. The Shirley Temple movies.
Yeah.
Loved those as a kid. You can't talk about black and white movies without talking about the Andy Hardy movies, and then the Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland movies like Babes in Arms, and my best friend Becky, when she was in high school, looked just like Judy Garland in Babes in Arms. But anyway, Babes in Arms and the other Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland movies, where the solution to every problem was, let's put on a show. I loved those movies. They were so much fun. But finally, Citizen Kane, which is by many considered to be the greatest movie ever made. It is an outstanding film, and
Orson Welles is.
Yes.
You can't overstate what Orson Welles did for American entertainment. We talk about his movies here, but he was also very famous on the radio. And you could bring up another one of his movies that I really love, that probably not on the same level as Citizen Kane, The Third Man. Fantastic movie starring Orson Welles as the bad guy, and he pulls it off in such a way that you kind of like him. And for a movie of its time, that didn't happen. Bad guys were bad and the good guys were good. And in both Citizen Kane and in The Third Man, you have Orson Welles able to kind of muddy the water a little bit and say, is this guy a good guy? Is this guy a bad guy? And the answer is, yeah, he is. He is a good guy. Yeah, he is a bad guy. It's not always as black and white as what the screen would have you believe, and really was a precursor to a lot of movies that fought the establishment in the 1960s, the spaghetti westerns, where the good guys were bad and the bad guys were good, and you changed that whole dynamic. Really, really powerful and important factors. Okay, I've got 2 more movies on my list.
Okay.
The first one's a Charlie Chaplin movie, The Great Dictator.
Okay.
Charlie Chaplin was famous for his Little Tramp character, and by 1940, when he did The Great Dictator, his career was kind of on the downward slide from an acting perspective. He was still directing, he was still writing, he was still a big box office draw. But Chaplin, who had been the rogue, lovable clown, decided to take on a serious topic and puts on the greatest spoof of Adolf Hitler that I've ever seen. It is fantastic. Now, of course, he had the little mustache that Hitler also had, but his sound-alike German is hilarious. The movie is impeccable. He makes fun of what at the time was a real threat, what was a real political ideology that went through the world in the late 1930s, which is the idea that, no, we don't, representative government's great, but if it always crashes and we end up like this, then we need to have we need to have a dictator. We need to have someone who can control all this. And this is early 20th century stuff that he took head on and turned it on its ear and made fun of it, and did it in such a way that I think it began to galvanize American sentiment against the Axis powers in World War II. You can't overstate the impact that this movie had. Charlie Chaplin was, first off, he's English. He comes to the U.S. and in silent movies is one of the funniest actors for an entire decade. I mean, the 1920s and 30s, he was it. He was the pinnacle of movies. And then he comes and does this movie, and all of a sudden you see a growth in sentiment from isolationist United States to sympathetic look towards England. And it wasn't one that you go, oh, we're definitely on England's side. It was one of those that like, you know what? This guy, this Hitler guy is bad news. I mean, we kind of knew it. And it takes parody sometimes to do that. And that's a very powerful movie.
What's your other one?
The last movie is one we talked about around Christmas, It's a Wonderful Life.
Great movie.
Fantastic movie. You know, the story of the movie, how it was made and so on and so forth is really incredible. It's the only movie that ever made money for Liberty Pictures. Came out in 1946, right after the war. You know, the story behind, you know, Jimmy Stewart coming out of the military, out of bombing raids, didn't know if he wanted to act anymore. He had joined the Army Air Corps and went on afterwards to still fly planes in Korea and so on and so forth. But a movie that in a lot of ways captures the heart of a small town and shines back the light of, you know, the best things in America aren't always measured in dollars and cents. And for its time, it was ahead of its time. I mean, you're coming out of World War II where the industrial engine of America had saved the world from the American perspective. And after the war, you're saying, well, now we're going to make money and build profits and we'll build the world in our image and everything will be great. And this says, yeah, money's great, money's good. You know, there's value in money, but there's more value in caring and doing the right thing and doing things the right way and being the right kind of people and being the kind of people we want our children to emulate. And I think that's a lot of what this movie does. And It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorites. It's one I watch every year around Christmas and New Year's. I cry at the end every time. I know what's going to happen. I know it, and it still gets me. I can suspend my disbelief. I can laugh at Clarence, who's just hilarious throughout that movie.
Who plays Clarence in that film?
You know, I don't know. That's a very good question. I'm going to look that up because, you know, it's one of those movies that really didn't have a Henry Travers plays Clarence Oddbody.
Okay.
It didn't have a great run at the box office. It had a good run at the box office, but was never really done a whole lot to it. Well, the story is that the copyright lapsed on accident, and so for a period of time, you could play the movie for free. And so in the 1970s. Television companies were like, hey, look, we could use a couple hours that we don't have to pay for. Well, hey, we got this movie. It's pretty good. It's got Jimmy Stewart in it. And they would play it over and over and over again. And so for a generation of people, they reconnected with this movie that probably would have been pushed off to the waste bin and, you know, not ever thought about again. But a fantastic movie. Jimmy Stewart's great in it. Lionel Barrymore, who honestly – a great actor because he plays he's in Dr. Kildare on the radio. He was, you know, associate of Dr. Kildare and was a good guy and people loved him. He was doting grandfather like, and then he comes and plays Mr. Potter, who's this arachnid, you know, spinning webs and just this really slimy bad guy, and all this. Even when he smiles, he's the Grinch before the Grinch was, and you watch him play, and he just embodies this evil. Fantastic acting job, especially, you know, juxtaposed to Jimmy Stewart, who's the affable, you know, kind of bumbling good guy. No matter what he does, he's always the kind of, well, you know, Jimmy Stewart. You know, it's just soft-spoken, slow, and kind of, you know, just a good guy all the way around.
I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to throw one other name out there.
Yeah.
The last time I saw Archie. So I'm not going to tell you anything about it, but if people can, they should look that up.
Absolutely.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.
And that brings the bill to $175. 175.
You know, I don't know why I should, but I keep thinking that one of these days you'll forget and accidentally buy a round. Something wrong?
Well, I haven't seen old big bills like this in 15 years, and the way you guys are coming up with them, it's like World War I.
They're coin of the realm, Charlie.
Yeah, well, I'm not kicking because I'm getting $3 a piece as collector's items. Are they paying you in this funny money?
You owe me 25 cents, Chuck.
Bowers, I don't know if you ever noticed how fantastically attractive I am to women.
No, I haven't, Arch.
Well, it's either something you have or you haven't. I have it, you haven't.
Nice of you to say so, old man.
But it's a frightening power to have. I mean, really, a frightening power.
Oh, I can imagine.
Now, for instance, you see those two girls over there?
Yeah.
Well, if I could just catch their eyes for a couple of seconds and hold them, those two girls would start to bleed internally. Now, that's a frightening power to have, Bowers. I only hope I always use it well.
Mm-hmm. Now, I suppose you think that I think you're kidding.
Why should I think that? Like I told you, there are the haves and the have-nots. I'm a have, you a have-not. You're just bitter about it.
Mm-hmm. What's all this leading up to?
Cindy.
What about her?
I think she's a spy, Bowers. No, I know you think that's a pretty drastic accusation to make on the spur of the moment.
On the spur of the moment. Everybody else has known it for weeks.
I simply brought that up because, well, love has been known to accomplish many things, and I thought that possibly I might use this attraction of mine constructively for once, to sort of lead Cindy from the path she's chosen to follow. Because you can say what you want, Bowers. There will be talk about an American soldier running around with a Japanese spy.
Oh, the gossips will be in their glory that day. Now, I know that this is such an offbeat suggestion that it hardly deserves any consideration, but, had you, thought of turning her in?
Buddy.
Whoops, sorry I brought it up.
Oh, don't even say things like that, man. You know, the more I think about it, the more I'm beginning to think that you went off half-cocked on this whole thing from the very beginning.
Me?
You've been against that girl from the moment you met her. Now, I'm sure there's some unhealthy explanation for this hostility that you feel toward her, Bowers, but I think the bad part about it is the way I let you dominate me.
I dominate you.
Oh, come on. Everybody says so. Cindy was complaining bitterly about it the other night.
Yeah, well, Peggy told me she thinks I can't make a single move without you.
Are you serious? How could I possibly dominate you when you have more money than
That's
I have?
just it. You dominate me into spending it all on you.
I do?
Yeah.
Let's check that. Hey, Chuck, hit us again, will you? My golly, you may be right at that. Yes, sir, you may have something there at that.